On a quiet weekend morning, Ben found himself yearning for an escape from the relentless demands of modern life. He decided to embark on a short, rejuvenating hike, planning to immerse himself in nature for just a few hours. The forest's trails, he thought, would provide the perfect sanctuary to clear his mind and provide him with a temporary reprieve from his demanding job. What he didn't anticipate was his adventurous spirit and the captivating beauty of the forest that ultimately lured him further into uncharted paths, gradually leading him into a twisting wilderness he didn't recognize or could escape from. After only 2 days, his supplies were dwindling, with despair beginning to set in. Every rustle of leaves or distant sound seemed to mock his attempts to find a way out. As he was making his way down a narrow deer trail, he began to smell something. He then recognized the smell. It was smoke. Smoke indicates a fire, and a fire means people, he thought. As he made his way further down the trail, he stumbled upon a primitive campsite. Relief washed over him as he realized he wasn't alone. The camp looked inhabited, with a small fire pit and rudimentary shelter made from branches and leaves. Ben cautiously approached, and that's when he saw him. A primitive-looking man with a wild look in his eyes sitting by the fire. "Hello? Are you okay?" Ben called out, his voice trembling from fear and excitement at the prospect of human contact. The man turned to him, his gaze shifting between confusion and apprehension. "Who are you?" "What are you doing here?" he replied, his voice hoarse. "I'm lost," Ben admitted, his words tinged with desperation. "I've been wandering this forest for days, and I'm running out of food." The man eyed Ben for a moment, sizing him up. Then he reluctantly nodded. "I'm Robert. I've been out here for a long time. You can stay, but there's not much to eat." Ben didn't care about the lack of food. The presence of another person was a lifeline. Over the next few hours, they shared stories of their survival in the forest. Robert explained that he had intentionally isolated himself, seeking solitude from the outside world. "I never wanted to be found," Robert confided. "The wilderness was my escape from everything." Ben listened empathetically, but he couldn't help feeling guilty that he was now intruding on Robert's solitude. Still, he believed that helping Robert find his way back to civilization was the right thing to do. "I think we should try to find our way out together," Ben suggested, a hopeful glint in his eyes. "You don't have to be alone anymore." Robert hesitated, torn between the familiarity of his isolated life and the possibility of returning to society. Ben couldn't ignore the intriguing air of mystery that enveloped Robert, and he was determined to understand what had driven this man to hide away from the world. Later that evening, Ben decided to ask Robert the question that had been weighing on his mind. "Robert," Ben began cautiously, "I've been wondering about your life before you came to this forest. You must have had family or friends. What made you decide to leave it all behind?" His voice carried a blend of genuine curiosity and concern. Robert, who had been lost in thought, seemed startled by the question. He stared into the dancing flames for a moment before finally speaking, his words hesitant and laden with a heavy past. "I did have a family once, a wife, a daughter, but life had become suffocating, filled with expectations and pressures. I couldn't bear it any longer. I needed solitude to find myself again." Ben listened intently, realizing that Robert's decision to isolate himself was deeply rooted in personal struggles. He saw in Robert's eyes a profound longing for something that had been lost. "It sounds like you needed a break," Ben offered gently. "But is this what you truly want now? To remain hidden from the world forever?" Robert hesitated, torn between the familiarity of his isolated life and the possibility of returning to society. The forest had become his refuge, a place where he could escape the noise of civilization. However, as Ben's genuine concern and warmth began to break down the walls around his heart, he found himself contemplating the idea of reconnection. I don't know, Robert admitted, his voice trembling with vulnerability. I've been alone for so long that the thought of going back scares me. But I can't deny that you've shown kindness, Ben, and it's been a long time since I've had someone to talk to. With that admission, a flicker of hope danced in Ben's eyes. He knew that convincing Robert to return to society wouldn't be easy, but the possibility of reconnecting with his past and finding a new way forward was a path worth exploring. As the fire crackled between them, the two men shared stories of their pasts, forging a fragile connection in the heart of the wilderness. The next day, Ben's determination began to sway Robert, and he reluctantly agreed to consider the idea as the two men worked together to survive. Ben was determined to help Robert reintegrate into the world, while Robert was conflicted but appreciative of Ben's efforts. The forest, with its eerie silence and dense foliage, seemed to conspire to keep them trapped. As the evening sun was fading, Ben and Robert prepared for another night at their makeshift campsite. The firewood was dwindling, and the biting cold of the night urged them to venture out into the surrounding woods to collect more. The campfire crackled, illuminating the area around them as they were gathering wood. Ben noticed a peculiar group of rocks, so he went over to take a closer look. As he moved some of the foliage that was covering the area, he couldn't help but notice a cluster of unmarked graves hidden just beyond the campsite. An eerie sensation prickled his skin, and he cleared his throat, turning to Robert with a hint of fear in his voice. "Robert," Ben asked cautiously, "do you know anything about these graves? It's a bit unsettling to stumble upon something like this in the middle of the forest." Robert, his eyes fixed on the graves, let out a slow, eerie chuckle. "Oh, those?" he replied with a sinister undertone. "A handful of hikers have crossed my path during my time here, just like you. They were all drawn to this place by the same allure of solitude and isolation that I was." Ben's heart quickened as Robert's words hung heavily in the air. The realization was sinking in, and he swallowed hard. "What happened to them, Robert?" Robert turned to face Ben, his gaze unsettlingly calm. "Well, my friend," he said in a low, chilling voice, "in order to maintain my solitary lifestyle, I had to ensure they never left this forest." Dread gripped Ben as the gravity of the situation became apparent. Robert had manipulated Ben's trust and kindness, luring him into a deadly trap. The mask of camaraderie had fallen away, revealing a ruthless determination to protect his solitary existence at any cost. In the flickering firelight, Robert's smile twisted into something far more malevolent. "I like you, Ben," he whispered with a disturbing calmness. "But I can't have anyone jeopardize my solitude." The night descended, and the forest swallowed the horrifying truth, as Ben's pleas for mercy were silenced forever. Robert's isolation remained unbroken, his sinister secret hidden within the heart of the unforgiving wilderness.